It was 2 years ago, at age 37, that Patrick Brown became leader of the Ontario Tories. 1 year from today, he hopes to parlay that into becoming the province's 26th premier. How prepared is he for that job? Does he yet know where he wants to take Ontario? Let's find out. And welcome the MPP for Simcoe North and the leader of the official opposition. There's Patrick Brown. Good to have you here on TVO.
Great to be here.
Let us do some business off the top here. A full disclosure. My wife is the volunteer co-chair of your Health Policy Platform Development Committee, so we put that out there in the ether for everybody to know in the interest of full disclosure. Okay, first question. David Peterson, Bob Rae, Mike Harris, Dalton McGuinty, they all started on the opposition benches before they got into the Premier's office. So I want to first find out, how well does the job you currently have prepare you for the job that you ultimately want?
I think you certainly grow in the job, and frankly, you learn in the job. You travel the province, every corner of the province. You study the government's books. You get a sense of where there are shortcomings, and frankly, you get a greater appreciation for where there's no longer value for money. And so it's very instructive being leader of the opposition, and you get significant insights.
You know, if you do win the election a year from today, you won't be the youngest premier ever, and we'll put the graphic up here to show this, but you would be the youngest premier in 84 years. Mitchell Hepburn became Premier of Ontario in 1934. He was 37 years old. Edward Blake, back in the 19th century, was 38. Then you've got Bill Davis, David Peterson, and Ernest Drury, who were all 41, and then Bob Rae was 42 years old. I think one of Ernest Drury's, is it his grandson who works for you, or used to?
He's a good friend.
Good friend? Yeah. Anyway, for those who question whether a guy who has not yet seen his 40th birthday has the experience or the maturity to do this job, what do you say?
I never believed age is a barrier in public service. It's about getting Ontario back on track. It's about creating jobs in Ontario, making Ontario a place where you want to raise a family and create a business. And so I think that is the question: is how can we get more competent government in Ontario? I don't think it's an issue of age or any other characteristic.
Okay, but people look at you and they point out that, you know, you weren't a cabinet minister when you served as an MP, you weren't a parliamentary assistant, you weren't a chair of a committee, you've had no cabinet experience, obviously, at the provincial level. You know, compare that to the experience on the other side, or with the third party, Andrea Horwath, and they may ask, I don't know if this guy's seen enough or done enough to warrant getting the second biggest job in Canadian politics. How do you respond?
Well, I think the same old in Ontario is broken. Frankly, Kathleen Wynne and this Liberal government's had a lot of experience for 14 years, and that experience has taken us the wrong direction. Do we need more of their experience on hydro? No. Do we need more of their experience on receiving equalization payments and being a have-not province? Absolutely not. I think we need a new approach. I think we need a new way, and Ontario can do better and should do better.
Let me see if I can suss you out a bit on that, and I'm going to put this challenge to you. Without using the words Kathleen Wynne or Liberals, I want you to tell us why you think a government led by Patrick Brown a year from today would be better than what we've got now.
It will be honest. It will be transparent. You'll get value for money. We're going to focus on creating the conditions to create an environment in which jobs can flourish, where businesses can flourish. We need to unleash our job creators. That's not the case today. So it will be a very different approach. It will be making sure Ontario can be the economic engine within Canada.
I do remember when Mike Harris came in 1995, and within literally days of having the job, he canceled 4 things that the previous Bob Rae government had done. Have you got an informal checklist in your head already that if you win a year from now, this, they're all out?
Well, it's a pretty long list of areas that we say we're not getting value for money.
A few things
but
at the
let
top.
me give you one example right at the top, hydro. Some of the atrocious contracts the government's signing and continues to sign, there are some of these contracts that they're hiding. They won't give us the details, but we know where the notice to proceed hasn't gone out. We can absolutely get out of it with no legal cost. And so immediately I'm going to look at these bad contracts. The fact that we've given away $6 billion in surplus electricity, the fact we continue to give it away to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York, I want to look at those contracts right away. I want to make sure that as quickly as possible we deal with this hydro fiasco.
You know, the last party leader who said that he could cancel a contract for electricity and it would only cost $40 million, that ended up costing us $1 billion. Are you sure, as you sit there, you can tell us with a straight face that you can cancel these electricity generation contracts with no harm to the taxpayer?
Well, first of all, you're comparing two very different situations. You're talking about the gas plant where for the sake of a seat, despite advice otherwise, they blew $1 billion, and there's now going to be a criminal trial. There's going to be a criminal trial where the Liberals' chief of staff and deputy chief of staff are going to be before the courts of justice. That's a very different matter. Saying that right now we've signed bad contracts that the government's hiding, the fact that they're signing new ones, LRP2 hasn't proceeded with the notice to proceed. They just proceeded with 1,100 contracts the day after their unfair hydro plan. Absolutely, we can get out of some of these bad contracts, but never would I do anything that would have significant exposure to the taxpayer. We know on the Samsung deal, we couldn't get out of all of it, but we could have got out of $1.5 billion. Whatever bad contracts the Liberals signed that I can get out of, I will. And let me be very clear about this. These 30 mega contracts that we all know about and talk about, the Liberals got $1.3 million in donations. Everyone, the Auditor General highlighted we've overpaid by $9.2 billion for renewable energy. I understand why they're not going to look at it. I understand why they're hiding their contracts. These are their friends. These are their donors. Day one, if I'm Premier, that next morning at 6 a.m., I'm going to be asking the civil service. I want to make sure that I can see these contracts. I want to know what roots we have as taxpayers. We're not getting value for money for ratepayers. That has to change. And so what I want to work on right away, absolutely hydro.
And at what point will we get to see what your plan is to reduce electricity prices, since we're talking about hydro here?
So we've already put out our structural changes to hydro, what the structural changes that need to be made immediately. And of course, we're going to have a fully costed platform in the election. But let me say what I've already put on the record. We're going to stop signing new bad contracts. We're going to look at the existing bad contracts. We're going to rein in exorbitant executive salaries. We need to stop spilling water power. You know, we spilt, whether it's Manitou, Merrickville, Niagara Falls, we spill water power every day. And this is important to highlight because the Liberals will say they had to do these bad contracts. They had to do the Green Energy Act. They said it was about investing in green energy. Our own green energy in Ontario, Green Ontario Water Power, we're spilling. It was 4.8 billion kilowatts that we spilled last year. Incredible.
Do you support the Liberal government's plan to reduce hydro prices by 25%, potentially costing us $21 billion more over the long haul, but depressing prices for the moment?
It's a horribly short-sighted plan. Let me be very clear on that too. Their unfair hydro plan is not a plan. It's simply borrowing money. Hydro prices will skyrocket. They will skyrocket after the next election. In what world do we think spending upwards towards $93 billion to get $21 billion back makes sense? I would never sign off on that. I would never support that.
What would you do?
What I would do? Absolutely. So let me be very clear on this. The 30 bad contracts I'm going to look at.
No, I heard the list a second ago, but for example, if you don't agree with their plan, and I know you voted against it, to reduce electricity prices by 25%, which kicked in just a week or so ago, what's your plan for reducing electricity prices, if in fact it's even possible?
It is possible, and we can get electricity prices dramatically down. So you look at the global adjustment. So the global adjustment is where you see it visibly sort of on your commercial bill. It's blended in the residential, so you don't see it. But in some cases, it's half the bill. The global adjustment is a huge part of your bill. If you can get at the global adjustment, you can see significant cost savings. Now, this is where the bad contracts come in. I can't get the gas plant money back. That's gone. That billion's wasted. But in terms of all these surplus generation that we have, all the surplus generation we have to pay for and give away, we can get at that. We can reduce the global adjustment. And by reducing the global adjustment, you're saving ratepayers. Okay.
Mr. Brown, I want to ask you about the fun challenge it is to be the leader of the conservative forces. And by that, I'm talking about red Tories, libertarians, social conservatives, slash and burn conservatives, economic conservatives. They're all, at the moment, coexisting, sometimes less peaceably, sometimes more peaceably, under a big blue tent. How difficult is it for you to satisfy all the disparate elements underneath that big blue tent?
Listen, you can never make everyone happy. All you can do is be true to yourself and do what you think is in the best interest of the province. And I've always said, I think there's no monopoly on a good idea. And a good idea can come from any corner, whether it's a Liberal idea, an NDP idea, a red Tory idea, a blue Tory idea. If it makes sense for Ontario, I'm going to push it. And I'm going to do what I feel is right.
Social conservatives certainly do not feel the love from you anymore. Are they right to feel that way?
No, listen, social conservatives, any Ontarian is welcome in the Ontario PC Party. I want to be inclusive. But what I've said very clearly is that my version of being an inclusive party means this. It doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or what God you worship. You have a home in our party. And for those that want me to not welcome people because of sexual orientation or who they love, it's not on. And let me say, I was proud to walk in the Toronto Pride Parade to be very clear that that's our modern, inclusive PC party.
Would a government led by Patrick Brown permit a private member on the backbench to introduce a bill that might have something to say about abortion or capital punishment or gay marriage or something like that?
I have no interest in revisiting these issues, and I will certainly use the powers of my office to discourage that.
To discourage that, but prohibit that? Would you prohibit it?
Well, it would never be part of my agenda, and I would certainly use the weight of my office to discourage that.
Here is former PC MPP from Thornhill, Peter Sherman, writing on OntarioNewsWatch.com a couple of weeks ago. He wrote, "The wild card is Patrick Brown and allegations popping up of wrong-headed policies, insufficient policy development, undesired centralized control of riding nominations, and questionable tactics inside this old and proud institution. All parties are going to have to clearly solidify their positions long before June 2018. If strong voices emerge from unanticipated newcomer groups running counter to what Ontarians have come to expect, the political landscape could look different than the pictures being painted by both mainstream media and polling organizations." There is a lot to unpack here, so let's get to this. Does your party at the moment plead guilty 1 year out to insufficient policy development so far?
First of all, Steve, I think you're giving me too many softball questions. But in all seriousness, we're having a policy convention in November, and it's going to be the most wide-ranging grassroots policy consultation process we've ever had. We've seen enormous growth. You know, a few years ago, the party had 10,000 members. We're well over 100,000 now. And so it's more difficult getting everyone's opinions, but we've really opened up the policy development process, and it's exciting. In terms of nominations, right now in the NDP and Liberals, you see acclamations. You don't see contested nominations. The fact that we have so many people running for the party, so much interest in the party, speaks to that sense of change that is developing in the province. People want change at Queen's Park, and that's a good thing. Now, it also means there's acrimonious battles, but the fact so many people want to run for the party is a great thing.
I appreciate that and with that added interest of contested nominations do come some bad sides, and I want to point one to you. In Richmond Hill, apparently, at the end of the day, it was a tie. And the person who could have broken that tie was a guy who needs a wheelchair to get around, and the party apparently could not get him into the building so that he could have casted his vote for the candidate he wanted, who therefore would have won. The person who did sort of flip the coin and make the decision about who would win was the local party president, and apparently he chose the other candidate. You have potentially right now in Richmond Hill a candidate, therefore, that is an illegitimate victor. Do you plan to look into this?
Well, listen, every allegation will be looked into, and that's an allegation that you have repeated.
I spoke to the guy who uses the wheelchair, so it's not an allegation. So I know who he would have voted for.
At these meetings, anyone that wants to vote is permitted to vote. And having said that, every allegation will be taken seriously. There's so many people who throw their hearts into these nomination campaigns, and I know it is tough to lose a nomination campaign, but the party takes every allegation seriously. They investigate them. And I actually went to the length, because we have such enormous nomination meetings right now, that I actually asked PwC to monitor them to make sure we're getting best practices. That's certainly further than the other parties have gone, and I'm proud to have done so.
You know the quip I heard about that, though. These were the guys who screwed up the Oscars, and you brought them in to oversee your political process?
No, I think the PwC has a pretty stellar reputation other than the Oscars, but they did do the federal NDP leadership and have been used in the political process before.
Let me ask you about all the fun you've been having with Jack McLaren. He is one of your MPPs who over the last several years has gotten himself into some difficulty with you. He either quit the caucus and joined the Trillium Party, or you expelled him. I think there are different versions on what happened here. I don't necessarily need to go through chapter and verse on that, other than to raise it as an example of whether or not you're concerned that some of the more right-wing and in some cases more social conservative voices within that big blue tent of yours are feeling like you don't listen to them, and therefore they can't be happy in that big blue tent and may need to join other forces, thereby, splitting off votes that potentially would go to you and hurting you a year from today. What do you say about all that?
Well, Steve, I'm very serious about building a modern, inclusive PC party. And as I've said many times, and I said to you earlier today, it doesn't matter who you love, it doesn't matter where you're born, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, what God you worship, what language you speak. You have a home in our party. And I've been patient with Jack McLaren, but 3 strikes, 4 strikes, 5 strikes, you're out. And frankly, he tested my patience too long, despite warnings. And there was too many concerns that he did not share the values that I hold and the party holds. And it's difficult to fire a caucus member, but frankly, he did not share the same perspectives of the party.
Do you worry, though, that if he takes some votes away from whoever the nominated candidate in that riding turns out to be, or if you face similar situations, that's going to splinter the center-right vote and make it more difficult for you to win?
You still have to do what's right. Whether he takes a few votes away in that riding, frankly, I could not continue to defend comments that I felt were inappropriate.
Let's look ahead. You have been in a very interesting spot for the last 2+ years, in as much as you have been leading the public opinion surveys for People's Choice to form the next government of Ontario. So the temptation may be to play it a bit safe, lest you risk losing your lead. Is that the plan?
No, the plan is to do what's right. It's to not put partisan blinders on, it's to be open-minded, reasonable, pragmatic, and collect good ideas from every corner. And people are surprised. Sometimes I'll vote for an NDP idea or a Liberal idea. I'm acting that way, governing myself in that manner. But that's what I believe. If there's a good idea that's put forward by Sherry DeNovo of the NDP on PTSD, or a Liberal idea on expanding hospice, I'm going to speak in favor of it because it makes sense for Ontario. We're not playing it safe. We're doing what is right. We're being comfortable in our own skin and speaking from our heart. Frankly, I think what we could benefit from right now in Ontario is less partisan blinders and focusing on how we're going to get this province back on track. Because I think right now the big question in this province is, how did the province that under Bill Davis was the envy of the country, that for decade after decade, the province that was the envy in Canada receives equalization payments, has had its credit downgraded. The government's faced 5 OPP investigations. How are we going to turn this ship around? And that's what I'm going to work on day in and day out to make sure this province can be the envy of Canada again.
That may all be true. The reality is, I'm sure you've looked at the history, and we'll finish up on this. Rookie leaders, which is what you are, have a very difficult time winning. There's only been one rookie leader in 43 years who's won first time out the gate, and that's the woman who holds the job today. What do you have to do to break the rookie curse?
I think a big fan of, someone you're a big fan of, Bill Davis won the first time out, too.
It was 1971, longer ago.
And I'm a big Bill Davis fan, so I hope we can replicate Premier Davis and make sure that by being honest, being transparent, speaking to that modern, inclusive, progressive, conservative vision for this province, that we'll be able to be successful in the next general election and get down to work at making this province an economic engine within Canada again.
That can't be a coincidence, though. I mean, apparently people like to kick the tires the first time, but they're not, generally speaking, prepared to give a rookie leader the keys to the Premier's office at Queen's Park until the second time. There's lots of people who've had it on their second go-round, precious few on the first go-round.
I'm sure the Liberals will try that line in the election campaign, but the reality is, for 14 long years, they've been in charge of Ontario, and they have let us down. And I think it's long overdue to have a new approach. And my pitch to Ontarians is going to be, you deserve value for money. You deserve a government that works for you. You deserve a government that's focused less on their own partisan interests and more focused on what's in the best interest of the province of Ontario. And
we will keep focused on the year to come. Patrick Brown, leader of the Ontario PCs, it's good of you to show up tonight at TVO, and thank you for taking our questions.
My pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.